52 seconds of logos.
2 seconds of pointing things out on the screen.
Hey, it's Josh Holloway, which if Lost or Aerosmith videos have taught me anything, means he's a scoundrel and or a bad guy here.
Hey, it's Jeremy Renner, who we've also seen play a sidekick in the MCU. See, I can do that too.
These guys completely miss him, but he hits both of them while falling.
He's an IMF agent, dude. Feel like he has better training.
I don't know, I see a hot lady walking down an alley after I just did some super spy shit. I'd probably be suspicious, but maybe they don't teach the danger of boners at spy school.
Except he is suspicious when his contact lenses warn him about her. Also, Jeremy says boner.
Wow, that text about this possible assassin actually killed him by distracting him from the actual assassin. Later we find out that Hanaway's fancy contacts recognize Sabine's face and send a message to his phone, which distracts him here and gets him killed. But later we find out he can see that without looking at his phone, so what the fuck?
No, it was more like Moreau shot him before he could think. Later, Jane explains that his lens warned him, but it was too late.
Ethan Hunt is a dick to his sleeping cellmates.
Considering these cellmates are in prison for presumably doing some bad things, they probably deserve this.
This prisoner is suddenly emboldened just because his cell door mysteriously opened. Why does he think he's got the upper hand?
Well, technically, in the full scene, one of the other prisoners was talking to him, and he tried shushing him, and this alerted the guard, so that's why he thought that.
Why do some of these cells have one dude, and others have two dudes? And this room has 4 dudes in it. This prison is making it up as it goes along.
Another case of you criticizing something that is real. Google confirms that Moscow prison cells can hold up to 8 prisoners. Do your research next time.
Ethan improvises to break out one of his buddies during a highly sensitive prison break plan. He's so confident in his skills, a massive chaotic fight in a tiny space doesn't worry him. And the ability to tow a completely untrained person back through it isn't given a second thought.
Yeah, this guy is Ethan freaking Hunt. I think it's really sinful that you think he can't do this.
Yeah, I better not show how Ethan got out of this, because it would be bullshit anyway.
Huh. Just like the characters in these movies, you seem to really underestimate Ethan Hunt.
Luckily, every prisoner on this level was absolutely ready and waiting by their doors as soon as it opened.
Well, think about it. Multiple doors have been opening, and they've noticed it, so they most likely were waiting for theirs to open so they can fight their way out. I think that makes perfect sense.
Haha, is this the fuse we'd see in a Naked Gun movie?
Arbitrary movie reference.
Spoiler credits.
Honestly, these credits felt more like a trailer, and yet we're still okay with those being around, even if some of them do spoil too much. Looking at you, Fast and Furious.
Paula Patton is, damn, simply not my girlfriend. I'm a failure.
Does your wife know that you said this?
What the fuck is he doing? It looked like he was trying to find Moreau, but he's just standing there, pointing his gun at nothing in particular. Moreau just left the scene, too.
He didn't see her, though, and he's afraid the assassin might still be around. Man, you'd be a terrible secret agent if you don't have your gun out to protect yourself.
New intel suggests Cobalt is already en route, leaving you
4 hours, 52 minutes.
to infiltrate.
4 hours and 52 minutes to infiltrate the Kremlin. Sounds legit.
It's literally in Moscow, where they are now. They're not that far away.
So they went from high-8 tapes to HD Oakley sunglasses to Kodak instant cameras to dirty-ass payphones with digital iPad screens. Jesus, IMF's mission delivery tech department is all over the place.
How are you on the 4th movie and you still haven't figured out that the IMF uses multiple ways to communicate with their agents? I mean, think about what you're saying. The videotape stopped being used, the sunglasses made too big of an explosion, and payphones are barely used anymore. They have to have multiple devices because these missions are urgent.
Yeah, I better make sure this message self-destructs. God knows how many people out there have Ethan's eyes, know the code he punched in, and could stumble on this payphone figuring out all sorts of secrets.
Better to be safe than sorry.
I think that went quite well.
It's absolutely bonkers that the IMF didn't send another person with way more experience than Benji to be part of this team. We're talking nuclear launch codes here, priority number 1 on their list, and they sent a guy who just recently became an agent.
Maybe the other agents weren't available. I think that's possible. And while Benji is new, he's still capable enough to do this mission. I mean, you're saying this as if he screws something up, and he doesn't. So this question doesn't matter.
Any tech security camera companies can come up with is always instantly rendered moot with the placement of a simple device, mirror, or a can of spray paint.
Yeah, because the IMF is that good.
Okay, this technology may be bullshit as hell, but I don't give a shit. The scene is tense, comical, and plot related, and I'm giving this movie 2 cents off for this stuff.
I like this scene too, especially the way it calls back to the first movie with its complete silence and no music. Take a sit off for recognizing greatness.
Well, how many noises is this guy going to be distracted by? He just got back to his seat from investigating the last phantom noise.
Well, what do you expect him to do? Not check the noise that he heard? He'd be a really bad guard if that's the case.
Have you made it to the archive room?
How do you broadcast on all signals, including this Kremlin secure channel and the IMF secure channel?
As well as Ethan Hunt, you seem to underestimate the crazy technology in these movies.
Ethan doesn't think much of this guy now, but is pretty sure Hendricks is behind all this when he turns the corner and sees the safe open. So why doesn't he follow him? This guy, of all people, would know where to go to be safe from the explosion, and Ethan's no slouch in the beating ass department, so it's extremely strange he lets this guy go.
Hendricks is no slouch either, if the ending of this movie is to be believed. And Ethan clearly took a note of him to catch him later, and like you said, there's a bomb that's about to go off.
Hey, look, Tom Cruise is running fast again. Man, I'm starting to wonder if maybe he does this more than riding motorcycles in movies.
Sending Tom Cruise sprinting like a champ.
Ethan outruns these explosions like he's the goddamn Starship Enterprise. Here's yet another explosion that merely knocks Ethan to one side or the other, instead of rightfully killing his fool ass.
So you say in the first scene that Ethan was able to outrun these explosions, and then the very next scene show him not being able to outrun these explosions?
Ah, I see. Ethan saw Terminator 2.
Arbitrary movie reference.
A wire is somehow perfectly positioned coming out of this random spot of the hospital for Ethan to do this.
So, like real life Moscow then?
European male, 50s, about 6 foot, 180 pounds, blue eyes. Who is he?
Wow, that description and your crude hand drawing probably means only one person.
Well, judging by Brandt's explanation of Hendricks' background,
Crude drawing, but by your description, that could be Kurt Hendricks, 190 IQ. He served in Swedish Special Forces. Professor of Physics, Stockholm University, specialist in nuclear endgame theory. Asked to resign, well, because he's crazy.
yeah, I feel like he was the best guess.
Could be weeks before the Russians know what's missing, unless we tell them.
They won't listen to us.
Yeah, so it's better to just not tell them, because who believes in covering all bases? And why would the Russians do something smart, like changing their launch codes just in case the Americans might not be bullshitting them?
Tom Wilkinson goes on to explain why the Russians wouldn't believe the IMF.
As far as the Russians are concerned, we just bombed the Kremlin.
But why? Because one American was found outside in the debris? Because it's still the Cold War? Because the plot demands it?
Oh, you heard that? And still kept that previous scene in? And the reason why they think Ethan did it is because of this scene back in the hospital.
American. But we both know that the real cause of the explosion was you.
Awaiting your go sign, team leader. Standing by to detonate.
The worst part for you, team leader, is I am the man assigned to make you suffer for it. For what you did to my country.
Из Ренковской тюрьмы сегодня сбежали двое заключенных.
Today? Really? He escaped prison, then planned the Kremlin mission, then got knocked out from the explosion, then escaped the hospital and had this car ride with IMF peeps all in one day?
Yes.
Flare on the body. Why would that work?
You might think we'd believe Brandt would be excellent at CinemaSins, but in this case, no. Of course the guys with guns would shoot at it. Why wouldn't they? Are they going to believe Ethan set up a dead body as a diversion? We would have sent it if they somehow knew not to shoot at it. Movie's attempt to defend itself in this case, even cheekily, is unnecessary.
I mean, Brandt kind of brings up a good point, though. A guy tries to swim away and then lights a flare, giving away his position. That's a dumb move, but the guys who were shooting had a lot of adrenaline and weren't thinking clearly, and so shot a clear target.
Retinal scan.
Luckily, this thing has a couple handlebars right next to it, just in case you need to hold yourself steady while being scanned.
How does that make any sense to you? This train wouldn't always be standing still. It makes sense to have these handlebars here to help agents get in.
Ethan?
Why would Benji and Jane think anyone other than an IMF agent could get into this car with a f***ing retinal scanner outside?
Better to be safe than sorry.
Intel indicates she will check into the Burj Hotel in Dubai in 36 hours.
Also, why hasn't Moreau already sold these launch codes? She took them 2 days ago, and it's going to be another couple of days before she sells them to Hendricks, because IMF agents always have time.
Maybe there were other things that both parties had to deal with. Maybe this upcoming day was the best time to schedule a free moment for both. Again, I think these scenarios are possible.
We're shut down. No satellite safe house, support, or extraction.
Only this super high-tech train with all the weapons and gear we could possibly need. That's all we have at our disposal.
I mean, there are multiple points where the gadgets malfunction throughout this movie, and it's pretty lucky they were able to get through these missions. I'd say his point still stands.
If you'd seen this zoom in and over the Burj Khalifa shot in IMAX like I did, you'd know exactly why I'm taking a sin off here.
Sadly, I was too young to see this in IMAX, but I believe you. Even watching this movie at home, this scene is awesome, and one of the best sequences in the franchise. take another sin off.
Glove begins to malfunction for the sake of the scene's tension.
And this is one of the reasons why this sequence is so great, because one of the gloves stops working and forces Ethan to get creative with his climbing. Honestly, I would have removed another sin for this movie, creating amazing tension.
Ethan falls this far, but the movie glosses over his climb back up like it's f***ing nothing.
Do you really want to see that all over again, which would have padded the runtime?
By the way, despite having top-notch security in this room, Burj Hotel decides that no determined person could ever come through the glass and doesn't put an alarm on it.
This is the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. Why would any robber even think to try and get this high to get through the windows?
You guys knew exactly who you needed to make masks for, but you waited until the last minute to start the process. Why not on the train?
Doesn't matter though, because I think this machine would have stopped working then too.
Goggles. Ridiculously detail-oriented super spy Ethan Hunt forgets he has his goggles around his neck because he's going to need them later during the sandstorm scene.
Oh no, a character made a mistake. You're really expecting Ethan to be perfect here?
Earlier we saw Benji changing the numbers on the doors so that the bad guys would go into the wrong room. But even though Benji has control of the elevators, there isn't any explanation that he can fool the elevator into displaying the wrong floor. This is from a movie that tells us every other aspect of the plan.
Benji has been messing with the elevator by having it stop at the wrong floor. You don't think he can change the number to fool the bad guys?
Come on. First off, I know we can see it since the camera is getting an extreme close-up of his eye, but how can she from where she's sitting? Second off, slick super spy is somehow this easily detectable just by looking at it.
When Moreau gave Brandt the launch codes, he needed to blink twice to copy the codes onto the paper for Jane to give to Hendrix. Moreau noticed this and was clearly suspicious. That's why she looked closely at Brandt's eyes and saw the lens.
Fight gives character who wanted to murder someone for revenge a non-revenge reason to murder that person.
If she didn't have revenge reasons, I don't think she'd kick her out the window.
Ethan bails out of a car going over 50 miles an hour and suffers no consequences.
This is the same series that already has a bunch of ridiculous gadgets that have no basis in real life. If you were able to suspend your disbelief for that, then surely you can for stuff like this.
Even if he knows for a fact who you are after pulling off a piece of that mask earlier, what's the freaking point?
It's just so he can mess with him.
Max's henchman from the first movie got out of prison and just happens to work for the one guy Ethan needs to give him information. And is using the same covert traveling techniques.
The real sin is that this person that Ethan's been calling and gets info from should have been Max. Like, why would you have the same henchman, but not Max herself?
Brandt's backstory super coincidentally involves Ethan Hunt and his supposedly dead wife, which is extra weird, given how accidentally Brandt came to be part of Ethan's current crew.
Another one of those coincidence sins. You know, it sure is convenient that Moreau and Wistrom hadn't met before so the team's plan could work. Get it?
This entire operation relies on Jane being the hottest, most alluring woman at this party, which I admit is kind of hard to fault, but how do we know Halle Berry isn't wandering around? Or Selena Gomez? Did I say Selena Gomez? I meant Betty White. Sorry about that.
You think it's just her looks? What about how she interacts with Nath?
Why am I Pluto? It's not even a planet anymore.
Movie rips off and updates the Mr. Pink argument from Reservoir Dogs.
How is it a ripoff if this is an argument in real life?
Impressed yet?
For this scene's motivation, Paula Patton was forced to pretend her pop star husband had cheated on her, and she was after revenge.
Anyone laughing? Anyone?
Saturn, take the leap.
By the way, why can't he do what Ethan did in the other Mission Impossible movies and just have some climbers' cables and rappel down the tunnel? Couldn't he at least do that instead of jumping 25 feet to his possible death, then use the cool magnet thing later?
But why do that when the magnet is right there to catch him? The cables would have taken a lot more time, and they need to be quick about this.
Wow, this maneuver couldn't have been more convenient. Not only did he miss that killer turbine, it even blew him closer to the ventilation shaft.
I don't see how this is convenient, since it's at full power.
My frustration at seeing Ethan escape requires the undoing of my tie. My relief at having escaped requires the undoing of my tie.
Two of the most nothing sins I have ever seen.
Tom Cruise runs really fast past a bunch of motorcycles.
But wouldn't you have sinned Tom Cruise for riding a motorcycle?
This fight goes on far too long for one that includes Ethan Hunt and a really old pudgy dude.
Which further proves that Hendrix is a really capable fighter.
Honestly, I feel like I could have gotten this case by now. I know he's hurt, but it's like both of these guys are coated in butter during this entire scene.
You can barely pay attention to movies. I object.
That is a terrible idea. And of course he survives. He should have just jumped. Airbags are not f***ing beanbag chairs.
You just saw Hendrix jump, and he could barely move. Yes, this still wounds him, but at least the airbags give him a somewhat softer landing than just falling onto the floor.
And if it hadn't been for dumb luck, was it?
Yes, it was.
Yelling at the screen.
So you had to fake your wife's death.
As long as we're together, she can never be safe.
I just don't see how that can be true. If you work at the CIA, aren't there all sorts of options to keep you protected? Plus, I don't know how you continue to do this kind of work if you're so easy to identify or locate.
We already talked about this in the last movie. Ethan and Julia breaking up like this is the best way to protect her just in case. Better to be safe than sorry. Sure, maybe the IMF could have ways to protect her, but Ethan clearly wants her to live a normal life.
Surprise cameo is not really all that surprising if you've seen a couple of movies before. But oh well, I'm glad they have this weird arrangement that doesn't make any sense. Those crazy kids.
Or it isn't a surprise, and it's just a fun cameo like it was when Luther popped up in this same scene. And it does make sense. Don't make me repeat myself again.